Thank you, everyone, for joining our second time of trialing this out. We certainly value our beautiful grant applicant and charitable community here in Australia, and we're just so thankful that you found us and you know about this amazing grant that our members have helped to fund. My name is Karen Britton. I'm the Executive Officer of 100 Women, and I'm joined today by Kristy Rodwell, one of our founding members of 100 Women and our grants chair for now 13 years. So I'll be introducing Kristy very shortly, but I just wanted to run through some housekeeping and, of course, to really start this webinar today by acknowledging the incredible First Nations and Torres Strait Islanders around our country, acknowledging the beautiful lineage and culture that they've brought to this country for over 60,000 years. I am on Whadjuk Noongar land here in Perth, Western Australia, but I just wanted to welcome all of our First Nations people across this beautiful country and thank them sincerely for the beautiful culture that you've brought to us all. I also just wanted to share that our definition of a woman includes all those who identify as women. It's a really important viewpoint that we have here at 100 Women, so welcome to everyone that's on this call. I wanted to mention that this video, this webinar is being recorded, so if you would like to answer questions, to ask questions without your video on, you're most welcome to do that in the Q&A section, or alternatively, I'm going to be managing the chat. So throughout that session while Kristy's talking, I'll be able to respond to you. And then the other alternative as well is to pop us an email at grants, the grants at 100women.com.au. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Kristy Rodwell, who was one of our founding members of 100 Women. She works with Lottery West, the biggest grant maker in Australia. She has a master's in philanthropy. She has guided 100 Women's ethics and vision around grant making for now its 13th year. She's an incredible wealth of knowledge across international projects, local and national projects. So hopefully we can answer your questions today, and hopefully we can answer any of those kind of nuanced things as well that might be popping up into your head. All right, so without further ado, I will hop off now and hand you over to the beautiful Kristy Rodwell. Welcome.
Thank you, Karen, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for giving up some of your valuable Friday afternoon to learn a little bit more about 100 Women and our 2026 grant round. So just to provide some context, 100 Women is a giving circle. So our members join and donate. It's a collective community where we connect one another with like-minded values and a willingness to work towards advancing and empowering women and girls both across Australia and indeed around the world. So the women, mostly women, but also men, so everyday people who join our giving circle, they make a donation, and that's those donations, 100% of those donations going to the grants pool. The members get a say when we get to our finalist round. It is the members who ultimately vote and decide collectively on how the grant funds are going to be distributed. And we continue to learn and network together, have interactions and relationships with our recipients over time, and really create that solid community that's connected and empowering change for women and girls. So as Karen said, 100 Women has been around since International Women's Day in 2014. So March 2014 was when we launched. And over that period, we have funded 49 projects to over $1.69 million in that time. So all revenue that's been generously raised by our members. And that has impacted 39,500 women and girls, again, across a very broad geographic area. So these are a number of the organisations that have received our 100 Women grant over that time. Lots of organisations in WA, but also across the country, and indeed Australian charities working overseas. So that's myself. Look, It's important to note that the 100 Women Grant Round is facilitated by our members. So they come together and form a volunteer committee, and this is some of our committee some happy snaps from over the recent years. So these are the volunteers that generously give of their time and their talent, their expertise, and come together to look at both stages of our process, because we do run a two-stage process. So the first stage, which is our expression of interest, is now live on our website, and I'll show you that in a moment. But we're open now for our expression of interest process. The grants committee look at all of those EOIs, run them through a matrix, and then we take normally sort of 20 to 25 projects that show the most promise through to a more detailed stage 2 application process, where you'll be invited, if successful, to provide more information on your project. And that's also where we dive deeper into the project. We'll speak with the applicant, we'll speak with independent referees, and do more rigorous due diligence. So we purposefully structure that two-stage process. It keeps the burden manageable for our organisation. The grants committee is 100% volunteers. And it also makes it more realistic too for the organisations that are progressing through to that stage 2. We don't want tens of organisations filling out that stage 2 application when the chances of progressing to a finalist and ultimately receiving our funding is very small. So as I said, the grants timeline for 2026, we're actually open now, and the EOI will close, the EOI period will close on the 29th of April, so 4 o'clock Western Standard Time. Please don't end up pushing up against that deadline. We don't accept late applications. The round is open for an extensive period of time, and we do work to that deadline. It's only fair to everyone else who's worked to that deadline as well. Make sure you give yourself, in any grant round situation, make sure you give yourself plenty of time when you're working towards a deadline. We all know that if we do anything in a rush, we're not putting our best foot forward. So we'll receive those EOIs, run through our internal processes, and towards the end of June, those selected organisations will be contacted and invited to submit a more fulsome application for stage 2. Those applications will be due about a month later at the end of July. We'll then again, as I said, do that more rigorous and robust due diligence on the stage 2 applications, and confirm towards the end of August which organisations will be presented to our members as the finalist. The finalist list has historically been about 7 to 9 organisations. And what we do is all of those organisations are presented to our membership, and they get to vote online via a voting portal on our website. So it really is the members that have that say. The 100 Women Board or the Grants Committee don't have any veto or any overriding say at that point. And then we'll make a public announcement of our successful grant recipients on the 23rd of October at an event here in Perth. So in 2026, we're offering grants between $25,000 and $50,000, and that'll be for projects up to 24 months. So we're always dependent on the generosity of our members, and historically we've been able to provide approximately 4 to 5 grants each year. But as I said earlier, it does depend on the grant funding pool, the size of that pool, and it's our members that contribute to that pool. So in terms of the eligibility criteria, this is really important, and I encourage you to also go back and have a look at our grant guidelines. They're up on our website, and they provide all of the information that I'm going to go through today, as well as probably a few other pointers with respect to how we operate the grant round. So the top 2 requirements are set by the Australian Taxation Office, and there's absolutely no ability for us as a giving circle that operates as a public auxiliary fund to waiver from these. So you must be a charity, and you must have item 1 deductible gift recipient status. Now, further to that, 100 Women adds a couple of other criteria to help us manage and direct our funds as the focus of the grant round. So we look for organisations that have been operating for at least 36 months. So you're not a brand new organisation. You've actually established yourself. You've have got a track record, and you're out working with your beneficiary group and other stakeholders in your respective community. We look for a total annual revenue of $5 million or less, and we use the ACNC, the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profits Commission, as our source for that information. And look, this requirement is set purposefully because we're targeting our investment at the grassroots end of the charity environment or the charity sector. We're looking to fund those organisations that operate at that smaller end and who are not necessarily well equipped to be able to tap into public fundraising or access other large sources of grant making or government funding and contracts. And we're also looking for you to be able to bring a cash contribution of 25% of the total project cost. So that can come from yourself, your own organisation, or your partners and stakeholders that you may be working with. Now, just a note about Australian charities working offshore. We do look at this more closely in terms of the revenue limit. This is because there are a number of well-established, well-credentialed Australian charity organisations that are working directly with grassroots organisations offshore, so in international countries and locations, and the Australian charity actually provides the governance and the financial management and the reassurance to Australian governments as well as Australian charities like us to be able to invest offshore. So if your organisation is in that particular circumstance, can you please reach out to me? Don't fill in an application. Reach out to the grants team via the email as your first step, and I will confirm your availability your eligibility or not for progressing an application if that particular context applies to you. Just a quick word about auspicing. It is quite common in the not-for-profit sector for organisations that do have the DGR1 item status to auspice or basically provide support or sponsorship or guidance to another organisation that doesn't have that DGR1 status. But for 100 Women, we don't support auspice arrangements in our grant round. We are basically funding the organisation that is leading on the implementation and who is going to be responsible for the expenditure of our grant funds. If you need any more clarification or have a question about that, reach out at the end of the presentation, or again, just drop us an email at the grants inbox. And then a few areas where we don't provide funding for. I think this is all really straightforward in terms of the post-it notes there. The one-off events is something we see every now and again. We're looking for your outputs and your outcomes to be beyond a one-off event. Faith-based or religious activities, that's a specific activity. There are a number of faith-based organisations working in the not-for-profit sector, and we have funded a number of those already. It's about the specific activity there. The other comment I'd make is about the general ongoing operating expenses. So that's about your electricity, your certainly your administration premises, the core expenses that the organisation is basically already addressing or paying the bills on, like right now, right today. We don't generally provide operating expenses. Now, the grey area on that is salaries. So when it comes to salaries, we will look at time-limited salaries that are specifically above and beyond what you may be paying now to be able to implement a project. So that may come about by using current staff, and especially part-time staff, in an extra capacity, or it may come about by employing an additional staff member or staff members on a contract basis or for a time limited period. Now, when we talk about salaries of, say, presenters or trainers or experts that you're bringing in specific for the project, I wouldn't classify that as a salary, and that would be something that's more a program cost that certainly we can look into. Okay, so as I mentioned, we do run a two-stage process. In stage one, our expressions of interest is now open. You can access the application form by jumping onto our website. You start your application and you enter an email address, and that email address will then be where we contact you with the link for your application. It's important to note that you can save and close, jump in and out of that application as many times as you like, and you just need to hit the link that's sent to your email, and that's your access. That's how you get back in. So you can jump in and preview the questions, maybe start filling out some of it, go and coordinate or collaborate with some of your colleagues, and then come back in as often as you like. Just make sure you don't delete that first email that we send you with the link. But of course, if something like that happens, just reach out and we can get you back in. So this is the first page, and just to show you that it's a really straightforward sort of 8-step process, and the steps are numbered across the top there like tabs, starting with eligibility, moving through your contacts and organization details through to the more specific questions about your proposal, and then a declaration and submission. So when you get a green tick at the top of the tab there, it shows that all of the questions on that page, the mandatory questions, which are indicated by a red asterisk, have been answered and you've got nothing outstanding, and basically that tab is complete. Where you've got a pink circle, that's indicating to you that there's still some work to do there, that you've got questions that haven't been completed, or you might have just missed a detail. So that's helping you navigate across the whole form. And then, as I said, that save and close up the top there, that appears on every page, and it allows you to go in and out of the form as often as needed. So in terms of the expression of interest, once you confirm your eligibility and provide the important details about your organisation and who the relevant contact is for our process, what we're really looking for is only sort of 4 key areas, and that is your project. You really need to be able to articulate clearly and succinctly the critical need that your project is addressing at this time. So the need that's been identified in your community and by your beneficiaries, or the opportunity that you're hoping to take forward. At this point, we don't have the resources or the time to be able to come back and follow up with you. So over 160 expressions of interest were received last year. And so we have to go upon what you've provided. And I really encourage you, not just with a 100 Women application, but with any grant making application that you're doing, really take the time to make sure that the information that you're presenting is clear and understood by someone who's not familiar with your organization. And perhaps you could double check that by giving the final application to a family member or a friend who is outside of your organization and perhaps not so familiar with the work that you do, to really ensure that the way you're communicating about your organization is clear for someone who's coming to it for the first time. In terms of the beneficiaries, so we understand that for the world to be a better place for women and girls, it's going to take all of us to step up and change our behaviours. However, 100 Women funding is primarily directed to women and girls. So when you're looking at your beneficiaries page, just ensure that your project is specifically and in the majority targeting women and girls. We want to understand how you're connected to these beneficiaries and what consultation that you've done with them so that their voice is clear in the project delivery. We want to fund projects where the implementing organisation is working with and in partnership with the beneficiary group. When it gets to the outcomes page, we're looking for you to understand and be able to communicate to us how you will know that you'll be successful. So what's your measures of evaluation? What are the outcomes? How are you going to know that the project is successful and has achieved what you've intended for it to do? And then when it gets to the budget page, we're looking for you to be able to articulate the components of the total project budget, as well as the items that you're requesting for 100 women. So we don't need line by line detail of sort of small amounts of money, but at the same time too, when someone submits a budget and it just says program and $50,000, that doesn't give us enough information to go on either. So you're looking for a good level of detail where we can understand the components that you're needing funding for in the budget. But at this point, we don't need the real specific level of detail. So I would suggest anywhere from sort of 4 to 8 line items in the budget would be sufficient, depending on the nature of the project, to communicate to us what's being funded and how that total project cost is being built. And then the declaration is just some terms and conditions. So it's really important that for not only our 100 Women grant process, but basically when you're communicating to any grant maker, when you're trying to respond to a grant round, or maybe you're having conversations in a corporate or private family situation, or maybe even communicating to government about looking to attract government funding to your project and what you're doing for your community. You need to be able to clearly articulate what it is that your project is doing. What is the need? What is the problem? What is the opportunity that you are actually working in and around and trying to solve for your specific beneficiary group? What are the activities that are actually going to occur? And then the outputs, which are different from the outcomes, and then the long-term impact. So this theory of change model, and it can be really quite a simple theory or more complex, depending on the nature of your project, is really important for you to be able to understand internally for your staff and for your organization, and then be able to communicate that externally. So there's a great Western Australian-based resource, the Community Impact Hub. It's free. You jump on and it's got a wealth of resources which can help take you through establishing your theory of change if you don't already have one. And it also looks at the evaluation and measurement of any project post implementation, or even planning for that evaluation and impact when you're building your project and building your theory of change. So encourage you to go and have a look there if you're looking for fleshing that out some more, or understanding that concept in a bit more detail. So as I said, as a giving circle, we will present 7 to 9 finalists. Those organisations will have already agreed to our terms and conditions for funding. They will have been vetted by the 100 Women Trustee Board, and then we hand it over to our members for them to decide where they would like to see the funds invested. Now, we're always looking for a mix of projects to present to our membership group. This isn't a hard and fast rule, but our members come to 100 Women and generously provide their donations into the grants pool, because they actually like to see that they're funding a broad group of beneficiaries. So we certainly present projects across a geographic mix, local Western Australian projects, as 100 Women has established itself in Western Australia and had a strong home here for the last 10 years or so. We are now growing our presence on the East Coast, but we still have a really strong connection to our home here in Western Australia. We look to fund projects operating across state jurisdictions and, of course, overseas. We also look to ensure where possible that we've got minority groups or at-risk groups within the cohort of women and girls represented. So that might be First Nations groups, call groups, recently arrived refugees or migrants, as well as women with disability. And we're always looking to make sure that the 100 Women focus areas across health, education, safety and economic opportunity are represented in the project mix. So the members vote, they jump on our website around September time and they get a full briefing around those finalists projects. They also have an opportunity to come to a grants briefing networking event here in Perth, hear all about the projects, and then they get on our website and get to vote. And I think it's nice for you to know too that they don't have to only say cast 3 votes. They get to actually rank all projects in a priority order. So for example, if there was 8 finalists in 2026, they would actually rank all 8 projects in the order that they would prefer to see funded. And then we make our public announcements of our grant funding in October. This year it's already been set for the 23rd of October. And then our successful recipients will receive their first payment. Generally, it's the first week in November. So this is a link back to our website. So you can have a bit more of a look around the Giving Circle, how it works. All of our prior grant recipients over the 13 years that we've been operating the grant round are up there with their projects and their stories. And of course, it's where you're going to find the link to start your application. So now that I've run through all of that, I'm really happy to address any of your specific questions or areas that you perhaps jumped on the webinar today to have particularly answered. I know a lot of you have got some questions, or I'm certainly seeing some questions come through the grants inbox already.
Do we have any questions from anyone? Okay, so Nadia Chavreau, she's asked, would welfare services be considered health?
Welfare services considered health. Can you give me a little bit more information on what you mean by welfare services?
Emergency relief.
Emergency relief. Emergency relief is a little bit tricky because emergency relief generally goes to a broader cohort. You would have to understand, or you'd have to be very specific about how you're providing emergency relief and welfare services to specifically benefit women and girls. Obviously, the need for emergency relief is high in our community at the moment. But as I said, you would just have to be able to explain to us and articulate clearly how that support would primarily benefit women and girls. Look, there's no doubt about it, right? There are so many projects and so many community groups, charities doing great work in our broader community across, the full community in, all its shapes and sizes, children, families. But our projects really do need to focus primarily and in the majority on women and girls. And it needs to be very clear. So, for example, I think previously too, we've had to have a close look at some emergency relief welfare funding for women with babies in the ICU. but a lot of that funding ends up benefiting the whole family. So again, know that need is high and that need is real, but it's just not the investment avenue for 100 women.
Thanks, Nadia. And thanks, Kristy, for that response. We've got another few coming through on the chat. So we've got Lisa people asking, can I ask if you are a new charity with a DGR1 status, but with no annual report due until this year on the ACNC, how do we get around this?
Okay, so I don't know that getting around it, I'm sorry, is the right question there. We really look for those charities that have been established and operating for 36 months. So that provides some reassurance to us and the board that there's a track record there, that you've actually gone through your accounting cycle and your reporting for at least a couple of years. It means you'll have reports through to the ACNC, or if you're an incorporated association, you will have also reported to your regulatory body in your own state or territory. It's a risk mitigation strategy for 100 women, and it's not something that we look to in terms of flexibility. The thing I will say with that, though, is again, over the years, we might have had some groups working, say, as a committee under a larger organization. And if you can evidence, and so you've been working for a number of years, you actually have that track record, but you haven't been separately incorporated. And maybe in the last 12 months, you've actually established yourself separately, say as an incorporated association, you've formed your own management committee, you're now reporting independently. That has happened and that has been able to be evidenced, and those organisations have been able to submit an application after they've had that verified. So if that scenario applies to you, I'd encourage you to drop us an email and we can look into that on a case-by-case basis. But we will at first be looking for the 36 months to be evidenced on your ACNC registration because you have a date established there.
Hopefully that responds the question for Sharon Tanner as well. Let us know if it hasn't. I've got another question around whether you support projects for people that identify as women, not born as women.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
As Karen said
Yeah.
in the introduction, our definition of woman is broad, and it incorporates anyone who identifies as a woman. So yes, indeed.
Yeah. And we've got Caro Monroy asking or mentioning that she operates a social enterprise that supports skilled migrants through career coaching, helping them build visibility in the labour market and secure employment. Would her business be eligible for this grant?
A social enterprise. So are you registered as a charity? So either through the ACNC, or if you're not registered through the ACNC, but you're an incorporated association in your local jurisdiction, you would be a charity. It would depend on the entity type that the social enterprise has been set up with.
Yeah, so she's mentioned she's not set up as a charity. So hopefully
Okay,
that responds.
yes. So
yeah.
again, look, some of these requirements are set by the Australian Taxation Office, because all of our members actually receive a tax deductible receipt when they make their donation through to 100 Women, so they get to claim that deductibility in their tax return. And as I said, therefore, there are some strict requirements on us via the Australian Taxation Office to be able to provide that tax receipt to our members.
Yeah. Thanks, Caro. So Kate Steele's asked about the number of projects that obviously that we support in WA, and whether we do support Australia-wide projects as well, which Kristy, you have mentioned that we do.
Definitely.
Did you want to kind of just follow on with that reasoning why?
I guess our prior funding record demonstrates the breadth of support that we have provided over the years. So We do support projects. We definitely love to see projects where there are say cross-border reach or cooperation. Now look, that's not necessary, but those projects do tend to resonate because of the impact. The 100 Women membership is increasingly growing up and down the East Coast, so we've now got members from Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane in our giving circle. So it's everyday people right around Australia that are providing the funding for the grants pool. And as I said, they really like to see a diversity of projects, but ultimately they are most motivated by projects where the outcome is clear and achievable for the beneficiary groups that have been identified. It's about making a investment that is going to deliver real change for women and girls, and is going to be delivered by a project or an organisation that's got a great track record for being able to implement and deliver on that project.
Definitely a great answer there. I've got one offline that came to us earlier. I just wanted to run through with you. The applicants proposing a specific project, what level of definition and certainty do you expect around outcomes, timelines, and budgets at this application stage?
Okay. So look, we do require, even at this EOI stage, a project that's been well considered and well planned. So we do need to know specifics about the project, the budget, with the funding contribution that we're looking for from yourself or other stakeholders. There obviously needs to have been work advanced either internally with your own organisation to be able to commit those funds, or with your relevant stakeholders and partners. And we especially look to know that you've thought about those evaluation methods and the metrics of success. So it does need to be a project that has already had some thought and planning behind it. So yes, we expect that you're coming to us with a project that has already been well developed. And look, the only difference I would say between the EOI stage and the second stage application is that we drill into that in more detail come second stage. So you have to be able to clearly articulate that and communicate to us that you've got a project that's well developed, that you've got your partners on board, your stakeholders on board, and that you're ready to, I guess, implement that project and roll with that project if funding was to be successful. And we're just looking for more detail with that, and teasing out some of the elements with the stage 2 process that we're running.
Excellent. So we have lovely Denise from a charity that is actually based in New Zealand. Can she apply?
So Denise, depends. If you're based in New Zealand, is your charity registered in New Zealand or is it registered in Australia? So that's the yes, in New Zealand. I think I just saw jumped up there on the screen. So no, look, Australian registered charities, again, is one of those requirements that's set by us, by the Australian Taxation Office. We're a public auxiliary fund. We have requirements that we have to meet and are subject to audit and review on every year. And one of those is very much being an Australian registered charity.
Thank you for that. Let us know, Denise, if you have any other questions around that. We had one more question from Cynthia, who asked about the types of international projects that we run. We have put a link to our grants, our previous grants, and there's a big cross-section there for you to have a look through that gives you a bit of a taste of how our members have voted for projects in the past. So please, I strongly recommend everyone takes that time to have a look through our grant recipient library. It's some beautiful stories that come out of that and might help you to shape your own grant writing as well. Helen Colston has asked about clarifying core staff salaries. under what can't be funded. Can existing staff salaries that are only employed to deliver the project specific to women and girls be included? Which I think, Kristy, you had said could. Is that correct?
Sure. Look, I'm
Yeah.
happy to go back to that. So I guess you got to think about, is that person's time that you're allocating to the project because they're definitely working specifically on the project. So, for example, I'm sure there's sort of leaders, executive officers, or other senior people in your organization. Now, if they are providing, say, 4 to 5 hours specific work on that project, that would be an allocation of their salary that I would be happy to see in a project budget. Someone who's providing more general administration services, or say IT or HR services to your organization, an allocation of that person's time to the project is a little bit more questionable, because I would argue that that work and the salary that that person is receiving has to be funded by your organization, whether or not the project goes ahead or not. So I hope that makes sense. But the way I describe it is the specific hours that you're allocating into the project because that person is working on the project. If they're working on or about in your organization, that's not something we would look to necessarily support, because, as I said, it's a core operating cost that you're having to fund today. And that'll extend to some of your other resources as well. For example, you might have vehicles in your fleet. Now, where those vehicles are going out and perhaps doing outreach to a new market or a new cohort, so you're using your existing vehicle and you're proposing in your project to reach a new group, well then, yes, sure, the allocation of that vehicle expense, generally ATO provides guidelines for that, for however many hours a week that the project is entailed or is planned to run. That would be fine. That would be a genuine cost that your organization is incurring to deliver the project, because it's specifically about that project. Hopefully that helps. I know it's grey. I know this is grey, and that the not-for-profit sector only works because of the people in it, and those people need to be paid their salaries. 100 Women is just very mindful of being a grant funder. It's a grant. It's generally one-off. It's not recurrent, and we need to be confident that your core operating expenses are well funded before we invest in your project, because it actually doesn't do anyone any good by propping up core operating costs with insecure grant funds.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that, Kristy. Janine from the We Belt and Beyond Youth Mentoring asked, she has a charity that supports young girls and boys in the organisation, but she's just asking for clarification that she would still be eligible to apply for funds if it's specifically for girls.
Yes, that's exactly right. So a number of organisations, especially say youth organisations, will be working with both boys and girls, of course, but I would envisage that you would already be running separate projects or programs for the girls only. Sometimes you'd be doing a mixed cohort, but other times you would be running something specific for the girls. So one of our great examples here in Perth, Koya Aboriginal Corporation, was funded a number of years ago, where we specifically did their girls sisterhood drop-in program on a Friday night to help keep those girls safe and away from risky behaviour out in their local community, as opposed to coming into Northbridge and the Perth CBD in the evening and ending up getting themselves into trouble, either being the victims of crime or perpetrating crime themselves. So Koya is an organisation, Aboriginal organisation, that runs a multitude of programs, and that funding was specifically for that girls' Friday night safe space. So I think there's a number of organisations that would be in that place where they can, I guess, ring fence the project or the program that they're presenting to us to a specific cohort, and that's absolutely fine. That's projects that we see on a regular basis.
Mm. Yeah, we had another one recently, School for Life Foundation as well, where we were able to fund girls moving out of primary school and into high school. So 50 girls were supported, even though it's schools for boys and girls. Yeah. So we have another question here. Could you please explain further the eligible point? We can contribute or source at least 25% of the project costs in cash. So just some further clarity around the cash contribution and what that is.
Yes. So we are a complementary funder. We're looking for you to be able to bring funding that's either your funding to the project or funding from other partners or stakeholders that are working in your community and with your beneficiary groups. So what that means is that of the total project cost, we'll basically fund up to 75% of that total project cost, and we're looking for you to be able to source the balance, and we're setting that balance at 25%. So there will be sort of real cash costs in your organization that you can attribute, like I talked about. If you've got an executive leader who's working on your project, directly providing their expertise and time 4 hours a week over the course of the project, that is a genuine cash cost to that project that you can count. Now, if you've got volunteers in your organization that regularly volunteer with you, that isn't a cash cost. That would generally be an in-kind contribution that you bring into the project, and we love to see in-kind contributions, but we're actually looking for that project cost split. So in those genuine costs that have to be incurred for being able to deliver the project, we're looking for that partnership between 100 Women providing grant funds, as well as yourself and your partners also investing in the project. And look, we look for that cash contribution because it means that the project, specifically when you've got other external funders, it means the project has been I guess, tested and has buy-in from other funders, especially in your community, other partners, other stakeholders, other people working with those beneficiary groups are invested in the need or the opportunity that you've identified, and they're willing to put that money on the line. And look, at the EOI stage, I understand that maybe you're having conversations and it's not 100% confirmed. So when you put that money in, you can just say in the note field there, it says whether it's confirmed or not. So maybe you've also got another grant application in and you're waiting to hear back from another funder how successful you've been. So again, you can tell us that you're seeking funding from another say philanthropic funder or another grant maker, and that funding is unconfirmed at this stage, but you've submitted an application.
And the second round stage to Kristy then allows you to reinforce what has transpired if you have applied for grants and you now know the responses. That's why we have that second stage.
That's exactly right. We go into a lot more detail in the project budget in the second stage to understand that in more detail and to confirm what funding is being made available. At that point, we might have some discussions around scalability or where you're up to with the project funding. So there is a bit of time, I guess, if you make it through to that second stage, for all of that to be confirmed and sort of work through the wash. So yes, tell us what you're doing in terms of those funding conversations and just whether it's confirmed or unconfirmed. I wouldn't get too we need to see evidence of a well-developed project, as I said, a well-developed project that has had the consultation through the beneficiary groups, has had the consultation with the relevant stakeholders, and is something that is planned for and we can see that yourself and others are invested in delivering this project. Now, I don't expect every single T and I to be dotted and crossed at this first stage, but you do have to be able to, as I said, over 160 expressions of interest received last year, and that is a lot. We will read every single one of them, but you have to be able to communicate to us in a pretty short way that your project is ready to go, that the investment of 100 women members in your project is a sound investment for delivering the impacts and changes that you're planning for your community group. And look, don't get me wrong, again, so many wonderful projects, charities, organizations out there all needing funding. It's an incredibly tough environment for charities sourcing funding. We understand too that your costs are only escalating as well. So the market and the environment, the external operating environment is hard, no doubt about it. But then that also means too that we're looking to make sure that we make the most sensible investment decisions for our members, because they are trusting us to invest their money wisely and with a great degree of evidence and sound decision making.
Thank you, Kristy. Really comprehensive answer there. I've got two more questions, one offline and one from Jody on the chat. She's asking, she's actually a previous grant recipient. So can you talk us through their eligibility and any preferences with, obviously previous grant recipients being put forward to our membership? What's the trends there?
Sure. So, Jody, which organisation are you with? Because I don't recognise the name.
Hi, sorry, I'm with Love Mercy Foundation.
Oh, great. Thanks for joining us.
New to Love Mercy Foundation.
New to Love Mercy Foundation. Thanks. One of our overseas Australian charities working
2019,
overseas.
I think.
Yes, that we have supported. So, look, the minimum requirement is that we ask that you wait 3 years and that you have all of your previous funding acquitted. So I'm confident off the top of my head that the Love Mercy grant from 2019 is all finished and acquitted. So that isn't a problem. Look, the membership has looked at previous projects that or previous organizations that we've funded previously. Normally it's been an extension of what has been funded previously, or an add-on, or a development, or something more. It's not necessarily the same project that has been presented previously. So that's certainly been the case. There's nothing to stop you putting in sort of any type of project that you feel resonates, but that's basically from history. That's what I can tell you.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
That's okay.
Okay, we've got one more question here, and then I think we'll finish up just before 1 o'clock. So an offline one, when assessing public applications, how does the Grants Committee evaluate funding and organisations' overall capacity or growth versus funding a specific time-bound project?
Okay, all right, great question. Look, we are looking at both the capacity of the organisation to deliver as well as the specifics of the project. So, for example, we do ask that you provide your constitution or your rules of association as well as your most recent financial statements. So that gives us an insight into the core objectives and purposes of the organisation, and then we can see how that is being implemented and how that transpires through financial statements. It goes to the financial capacity of the organisation. We also understand your governance model by looking at those documents. Governance is articulated in both those documents. And then we certainly, while we're on the ACNC, we would be just double checking everything's in order. Things like if you haven't submitted your ACNC report stands out as a red flag. And I would say this to all of you, that any grant maker isn't going to look to fund organisations that aren't compliant. So make sure you're up to date with your ACNC reporting, that you don't have any problems there with your responsible people, that they're actually up to date, because that's something else that we're looking for to make sure. And it's a red flag if there's only 2 people there and I'm reading your constitution and it says you need to have a board directorship of 6 and a quorum of 5. Straight away I know that maybe there's been a change in personnel, but you haven't updated your situation with the regulator. So make sure you have your house in order for any process that you're applying for, because organisations check. Grant makers, philanthropic bodies, government funders will all check. The other thing we do is we always jump online and have a look at your website. We're looking for what's your presence, what's your stories, what are the community groups that you're serving and benefiting. So I guess that's the broader capacity issue, and it's certainly one of the elements of your application that we dive deeper into during the second stage. We're really looking to understand your track record of delivering projects successfully, previous workings and dealings with the beneficiary group that you've identified. And it's certainly at the second stage where we do your at least 2 independent referee checks, and we're looking for those referees to speak to that as well. So it's 2 different approaches. So that's more an overarching assessment of the organisation and its capacity and capabilities. And then with the project, the EOI is short and sharp. You don't have a lot, that we're not asking a lot of questions of you at that stage. But again, your ability to communicate that really clearly, really succinctly, and make us understand sort of, the who, what, why, how, without leaving us with more questions, is they're the projects that are going to bubble to the top, because we understand them really clearly. You haven't left us with more questions, and we can really see the impact and the changes that you are planning for your community. So a couple of messages I've already mentioned. Make sure you give yourself plenty of time. Make sure you've written it, your application, and then shared it around with a couple of colleagues, and then most importantly, 1 or 2 people outside of your organisation. And especially when it says, because there's some standard questions that grant makers ask, right? They want to tell us about your organisation, tell us about your project. That should be a refined answer that has been really polished and not put forward as a first draft in a funding application.
Well, that's, I think, a wrap for us. It's just 1 minute shy of 1 o'clock. I would love it if everyone who's still on the call to give Kristy a big thumbs up or a love or a party emoji to thank her, or a clap if you're on video, just to thank her for her incredible descriptions, advice and support for you all as you hop into the new grants round for 2026. We are here online and available to this wonderful community to respond to any questions you might have via the grants@100women.com.au email address. Otherwise than that, feel free to give us a call when you need. But just remember, we are wishing you the best of luck for this. We would grant every single one of you if we could. Please tell everyone about 100 Women's membership. Of course, 100% of the donations go straight through to our grants round. So the bigger our community gets, the more funding that we can give out. So we would love for you to share to your networks and your communities about the potential to become part of this giving community as well. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Happy Friday and good luck. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.